My father was so conservative. I'll just leave it at that. So conservative.
You described him as the people that I try to walk, I'll go the other way if I see it.
Yeah, yeah. I've been trying to forgive my father my whole adult life. He needed everyone to be a certain way, but specifically he needed me to be straight, Christian, and a woman. And I'm none of those things. All my life, I wanted his love and acceptance, but I didn't feel like I could have it if I couldn't change on the fly, if I couldn't become some different version of myself. So I spent most of my time with him shape-shifting, is what I call it. But what I wanted from him, I didn't think that I could ever have. Last year, he called me out of the blue and asked me if I wanted to go on a 2-week road trip with him to Utah. I immediately said yes, because that makes sense. I've never spent a single second with him because I wanted to. It was always out of obligation and out of seeming to be a good daughter. In the months leading up to the trip, I decided some things. First thing I decided to do was that I was not going to shapeshift. I was also going to stop lying about who I was. While I had already come out with him as transgender over the phone, this would be the first time he would see me after I began transitioning. So that was about 2.5 years of transition time. And I was nervous about what he was gonna think.
Right.
So he gets to the hotel and he gives me a call. So it's go time. I get up out of bed. I go to the mirror and I pull all of the air in the room into my lungs, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror. And finally I see the person that I expect to see when I look in the mirror. I go to the elevator, I ride it downstairs. I walk out into the lobby, and I can see my father outside smoking a cigarette. And he looks up, and we make eye contact. And it was this knowing. It was super subtle, like nobody else would know what was going on, but it was like a spark of electricity. And in that moment, everything that needed to be said was said with eyes. And we were fine. I was fine. One of the days that we were driving, I turned to him and I asked him if any part of seeing me appear so differently had been hard for him. And he said it wasn't as hard as he thought it might be. And I said to him, I was so afraid when I told you that I was transgender that you wouldn't want to be my father anymore. And he said, there's nothing in the world that you could ever do that would cause me not to love you. As the trip was wrapping up, we went to the airport, and my father turned to me and he said, I wanted to ask you, when the time comes, do you want to take my medals? My father was career Navy, went 2 or 3 times to Vietnam, and then was also in Desert Storm. It really struck me like how important that was, and how like that's his whole identity. And that was so like mind-blowing to me for who he is, and who I am, seemingly oil and water. I feel really so grateful and so lucky that we put our stories of each other aside and just we're father and son.
When I was 31, my daughter wasn't even 2, and I was I was trying to figure out ways how to check out, how to kill myself without it affecting her, which, obviously that is impossible. But that's where I was in life. I was miserable, and, I was hanging on because that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be a parent, a mom at the time. I had known what I was, and I say what I was because to me it was something that was so negative and disgusting, and shameful. So I knew what I was. I knew I was trans for my whole life. I guess it had just bubbled up so much that this was it. I couldn't handle it anymore. And I got this magazine in the mail, and there was an article by a musician, Laura Jane Grace. She was coming out as trans, basically, in this article. I still don't know why we got that magazine in the mail. Like, we don't order that. I don't know what, there's, something greater than me in this. I read that article, and it spoke to me. It just hit home. Everything she said, I could relate. I was like, fuck. And then what I realized is she was coming out to the world. I guess it gave me hope and confidence. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. I have a great family and friends, and I was surrounded by that, but I always felt alone. And reading this article, it changed my thinking. I had hope to live, and I knew what I needed to do. And I know I needed to come out. I know I needed to accept that I was trans. I came out soon after that to my daughter's mom and some close friends. I, of course, knew I needed to tell my parents, and they had been supportive my whole life. But still, I was so afraid to tell them because, again, I think it was just me hating myself. And so I decided, instead of a phone call, I emailed them. I think over the phone, there's an expectation of an initial, like an answer right away. You can't have this silence where they're processing something so heavy. So I emailed and told them, I would like to go by Cal now. And, this is how I felt for a very long time, since I can remember. Just within a few minutes, my mom emailed back and said, "Hi, Cal." She said, "Happiness is paramount in life." Of course, it wasn't what I expected. And it made me like myself a little bit more, too. Even if I can't like myself, if my mom can love me and like me, I can learn from that and start to like myself and accept myself and love myself. It's work, Getting that response gave me all the confidence I think I needed, because after that it was, it's not easy. It's not ever easy, but it was, you still have your day-to-day problems and your issues, it doesn't answer everything. But I got to be my true self with my day-to-day issues. Today, I want to ride it out. The rest of this life, I'm here.
Wow, I've really related to so much of what you shared about, even though I didn't get into it in mine, like I've had a history with alcohol. Yeah, those were some deep, dark days where if I accidentally died, that would have been good,
It's a good, I really like that you said shape-shifting. It's survival to me.
Yeah.
You had to do that to survive,
I mean, I've known, even though I didn't have language necessarily for it, I've known since I was really young that I'm supposed to be.
Right, yeah.
I'm supposed to be a male, and I'm in this body that is doesn't make any sense to me. I kept my being trans to myself and only myself until I was probably about 40 or 41 when I told my wife. And then she was the only person who knew. It eats you alive, right? I mean, do you feel like you were eaten alive when?
Yeah, if I was out or whatever and got called sir or whatever, I was like, "It's ma'am to you." Why? But
Right.
it's because I felt like they knew. Like they knew my secret.
Yeah.
It was so draining, trying to figure out how to stand more feminine and so tired.
I'm so glad. I'm glad for me. I'm glad for you.
It's hard for me to share such a positive reception and response from my family because so many kids, they don't get that and they're not here anymore because of that.
Yeah.
I just wish those parents could just take a step back and think, as your dad told you, I'm gonna love you,
Yeah.
and you're still alive, today,
Yeah.
and I'm still alive today, and you can save lives if you can just open your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
My mind was blown when your story ended the way it did, with you and your dad being how you guys are now.
Yeah.
Like, the story is not done until we have worked through it. Don't
give up.
Don't write the ending yet.
Yeah, don't give up. The part of your story that made me the most emotional hearing your story was hearing you talk about how suicidal you were. I relate to that and the pain that you have to be in that place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always hope, I guess. There's always hope.
Yeah, there's always hope.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was gonna say that same thing. I was like gonna race to it. Thank you. Suck it out.